Hey everybody, it's Andrew Lucio, Kyle Waple, local game store, coming at you with a video for the new banned and restricted list. I couldn't be more excited. Let's get right into it. All right, so new banned and restricted list.
Yep.
Supposed to come out February 2nd. Gets dropped on the 14th.
It's crazy. Like it's an emergency list.
I don't know. Look, all I know is I saw someone post up a video that said top 4 Earth Briar deck UK Nationals, and I was like, okay, so here we go. But then the ban list came out. So spoiler, I mean, not really a spoiler, but it is what it is. We shot a video of the old banned and restricted list, and it never came out, and it never will see the light of day. Because I'm going to tell you right now, I was heated, and I was emotional. So I'm glad that this happened. I couldn't be happier. We're going to talk about that today, and we're just going to kind of dissect what it really means, right? So let's start with the very first part of the banned and restricted list, which was the errata of the Earth tokens. What's your take on it? How do you think that affects gameplay for Briar overall? Just the errata specifically.
I think it was like the best thing they could have done to Briar. The issue with Briar was always like, while she was trying to have a turn, if you then decided, I want to have a turn too, so I'm going to take the damage, she then gets to follow up and not take any damage with a single card, and it was insane. Because there's a lot of like if you have an on-hit trigger and her non-attack action blocks for 7, you're not getting in.
So we're always talking about the overall tempo and pace of the game, and we try to break that down in a way that allows us to kind of identify where we're inefficient in deck construction. So being able to vomit your hand down the board and force your opponent into certain lines of play because of the fact that it diminishes the return on investment for their deck, and it diminishes the efficiency of their deck when they try to swing back with 1 card or swing back with 4 cards, but you have the possibility of laying 1 card to be very efficient at blocking with like a 5 or a 7, depending upon how many tokens you created. That really affects the tempo of the game. And when a deck is super hyper efficient and it has so much value, it gains a tremendous amount of advantage over any other deck in the format. I remember when I made my post, a lot of people came in there saying things like, get good, and you got to put the hours in. I can promise you, I'm not making a post without putting the hours in. I put a ton of hours in. I put a lot of time in. And on top of everything else, as far as the get good thing goes, it's like, okay, I guess I could get good. I could get better. Sure. That's probably what we need. But it doesn't make anything that I said not true. And LSS, they validated that. They validated that in a way that made sense for them because, again, whenever you're designing, whenever you're doing card design, you don't want to make 100 changes. You want to try to make 1 change, maybe 2, and then just kind of ease it in to see if you can pull back the overwhelming advantage that deck might have. Because you don't want to make the game unhealthy. So that's another thing too, right? And before we get into the next part of the banned and restricted list, I just want to briefly talk about dynamic gameplay and what that actually means. So dynamic gameplay, when you're a designer, is really just, does the game have huge shifts in tempo and momentum that would be accessible to lay players or players that have never played the game, people that are new to the game, things like that? Can the deck carry a new player and get them some wins at their local tournament? And that is basically what we're talking about when we say dynamic gameplay. And that's what Briar did. So on one aspect, as a player who considers himself to be a veteran-esque type player or whatever the case may be, I don't like it because it creates this tier 0 meta where we're kind of forced into certain lines of gameplay and we can't play the things that we want to play. At the end of the day, this is my hobby first and something I want to play competitively second. But again, for newer players, having a deck like that, being able to carry them and them being able to come out to their local and be able to get some wins, that can feel pretty good, and it actually can kind of help grow the community. So it's like burning a forest and watching trees grow after the burn, and that's basically where we're at. So, I mean, do you have anything else to say about the errata portion of it? So let's get right into the first ban, okay? So first ban, Plunder Run. All right? Plunder Run, that's easily 9 cards that are coming out of the main core of the deck. I mean, do you see it any other way?
No, but I think it's not only just Briar. I think Chain's losing at least 6 to 9 cards.
Okay,
And
that's fair.
Chain's had a showing, and then Katsu's losing 3 cards as well.
Okay.
So this is a hit not just to Briar, it actually hits a lot of decks.
So, do you think it was the right hit?
Oh, yes. I've been saying Plunder Run probably is the card to go. Maybe even argument for Snatch. I think just generic card draw is just something they have to be prepared for going forward. And with Briar, it just became too much.
Do you think the generic card draw is an issue because of the fact that everyone's hard restricted to a 4? So, like, it affects the actual core element of the game design?
I think our game compared to other games with the whole like drawing back to 4 at the end of the turn means that like aggro is way too consistent because they can't gas out. So when you put a generic way to draw, you allow an aggro deck to go even wider.
And I agree with that 100%. Plunder Run was a good card that allowed aggro decks to be even better because, as we all know, the idea is that when you're playing a game where you're, hard drawing, i.e. we don't draw back up at the end of our turn, so it's a hard draw. When you're playing a game that hard draws, you gas out because eventually you're going to run out of steam. You're going to run out of cards to play, et cetera, et cetera. But with this particular game and the way that they have modeled the core design of it, it's a lot harder to do that. And I know that the idea is, well, your opponent's going to attack you, so if your opponent's attacking you, you're going to have to block. But if I don't need to block and I can kill you faster, then if I can race you, then then you have to block. I don't have to block. And then if you block, that means you're not doing as much damage, and I'm winning the trade. I'm winning that race.
There's a decision to be made.
Exactly.
And when Plunder runs at 9, there's not a decision. It's I have to block, or they're just going to do way more than I can every single turn they resolve it. And then Briar gets a benefit from playing Plunder Run, which is when she plays her 2 non-attacks, she then gets Go Again on a stick.
Yeah, and then also, the core design element is that there are resource elements in the game, right? So we have yellow for 2, blue for 3, red for 1. But when all your cards are 0 and 1, you can run all the red, and that's the juice. That's the juice. So if everything is mid 4 plus 3, we're talking 7 tier up on the first 1 or even possibly 2 attacks, depending upon what your hand looks like. It feels crazy to push that kind of damage, average 14, 16 plus, consistently. It feels crazy. And it makes the game inaccessible to deck variety. Deck variety just doesn't exist. It's here are the elements. They're consolidated based on the metrics of what is really, really powerful and really, really efficient. That's the meta. And then if you don't play those decks in the meta, then your win ratio, conversion ratio at any kind of tournament is significantly lowered. So for individuals like myself who see it as a hobby first and a competitive game second, I have no interest to play, and that can kill communities. And you have to understand, at the end of the day, every game's foundation is built upon the casual player. It's built upon that because the casual player, they're the ones that are buying the sealed product. Like if you are watching this video right now and you consider yourself to be a competitive player, professional player, if you got your PTI, whatever the case may be, we're buying singles, guys. You know this. We're working for stores, or we own stores, and we're cracking product, and we're taking what we need out of what we crack, and then we're selling the rest. And we do this in that fashion. But the casual player comes in and goes, man, the new set's out. I really like this. I like playing my certain guy, and my certain girl has this many cards in the new set. I want to buy sealed product. I'm just going to buy this product because it's fun to open packs and it's fun to do X, Y, and Z. That's the casual player. They build games, they maintain games, they sustain games. And if we don't create environments where metas are healthy and open and inviting to those players, then we're going to die. And I don't want to die. I want to live. I want to live. But anyways, long story short, the ban is really good for me. I feel like these cards coming out don't necessarily affect those decks in the sense that they're irrelevant. I don't think Katsu's irrelevant. He can still tutor for any combo card that he needs. I don't think that Chain is irrelevant because Chain still gives free go again to Runeblade and Shadow actions. Deck is still very efficient, can play very wide. Remember, all those cards that you're shackling, that's more cards in your hand if you can play them from the Banish Zone. So you still become a 7-card hand, 8-card hand, 9-card hand, depending upon what's coming off the top of that deck. So Chain is still very good. And we've always made that assertion that Chain is very good. And again, back to Briar. They didn't hit the one part that I wanted as far as the errata goes, to where we kill that free go again for everything. I feel like it really should be limited the same way that Chain is, so it future-proofs and creates a better design space for them. Because now every card that they create, no matter what, they've got to look at Briar and say, oh, well, Briar can give this free go again. Is that a problem? Is that a problem? Hey, guys, test this out with Briar. Hopefully they get a really good team going, but whatever the case may be. But the point is, that's how your design space goes. If it can add go again to everything, then anything generic that you make or anything you want to make for Runeblade, you have to say, would this be a problem with Briar? And that's the problem. That's the specific problem. So, with that being said, Plunder Run, good hit. I enjoyed it, love it. But was that the end of the banned and restricted list?
It was not. We had another pleasant surprise.
And what was that surprise, sir?
We got Ball Lightning going, which is interesting. I mean, Tales of Aria just came out. It feels like we're at the tail end of the release, but like it's the newest set, and they're banning a straight Lightning card, and arguably one of their most powerful cards. It was insane in the sealed format, but Briar still ran the red and the yellow ones in most of the builds. I think even blue saw some play if you did like the earth builds. It's weird because it enables a lot of the like fusion mechanic.
True, because you can fuse with it, then use it, continue that chain out.
Yep. And just like it getting go was a surprise to me. Of all of the changes I expected, I didn't think Ball Lightning would go.
You were surprised by that?
I was surprised.
So there's two elements to how Briar gets the W. There's two. The first one is efficiency, and efficiency breaks down into everything you can think. That's, hand advantage, that's the ability to go wide, all that other stuff, and to do it in such a way that you always maintain momentum. And momentum is just you dealing damage to your opponent and them not being able to either mitigate that damage, block that damage, whatever the case may be. Which leads to the second point, where she really excelled was leaking damage. And this is what it means when I say leaking damage, okay? So I'm attacking you. You block super efficiently. You block insanely. You're playing Oldham, and you're just blocking like crazy, mitigating damage, Crown of Seeds, preventing that one defense reaction, set up a shield overblock, 2 shield, you're doing all the things. But then I leak in 1 arcane or 2 arcane. Or maybe on the tail end when I swing the sword, you got to take the 4. You got to take the 2 arcane, 2 from the sword. The point is, I leak in little tiny amounts of damage, and over time, I get the win. Even though you blocked perfectly, didn't matter. That's what we saw a lot of in Sealed. Like, you go against the Briar matchup, and even if you were playing Briar, your opponent would win because they leaked in more damage than you did. Because you're both trying to mitigate, and you're both trying to race. And they just got in more damage. That's damage that goes over your defenses. Even though you're trying to block, you're trying to mitigate, it still goes over. It leaks into, and that's what it means when it leaks damage. And Briar was the best at it. And Ball Lightning was one of those cards that said, I get to leak damage hyper efficiently. Because of the fact that it affected any elemental card and lightning card. So you have all these zero-cost cards that Briar already wants to play. And then, it becomes things like this, like Ball Lightning, Sting of Sorcery. That's 1 card out of your hand. Second card out of your hand, first Ball Lightning. And now we're already at 2 because the Ball Lightning increases that Sting of Sorcery damage. Third card out of your hand, Ball Lightning. And we're already at 3 because of the second Ball Lightning. And we're still leaking that damage. Then from the arsenal, still have a 4th card in hand. From the arsenal, we do something like Lightning Surge, right? Because it's from the arsenal, has free go again, right? So now that card is leaking in 3. And then we go from the hand, we just finish it off because it's the big turn. From the hand, we play any 0-cost Runeblade Elemental card, and it leaks in another 3. So literally from that chain, it was 2, it was 3, that's 5, then 8, then 11. Just 11 on the leak. Okay, now let's talk about what's down there on the ground. we still got potentially, let's say they're both reds for whatever reason. We just drew broken. But the point is there's 3, 6, then 4, that's 10, and then another 4, that's 14. Do the math on that. That's over 20 damage. And yeah, but the point is when you're thinking about how efficient a deck is and how much value a deck can get, you're like, oh man, that's a lot of leaked damage. That's a ton. That is a ton. And you've only got 4 cards in your hand. So try mitigating all of that. That's almost impossible to do. With 4 cards. Even if they were blues and you had 3, you could only mitigate 12 arcane. But then you couldn't block anything on the ground. So you took 14 damage because you're blocking all the arcane. Okay?
16. Ball lightnings.
Oh, God, I'm
17,
sorry. I'm sorry. My bad. I forgot. You do 1 extra damage. So that's the whole point we're trying to make here. This deck was super hyper efficient, and nobody wanted to see it. Everybody liked the fact that it was super hyper efficient. Everyone liked this quote unquote tier 0 meta, and it just wasn't good. It wasn't good. It was too toxic. It was just way too bad. So am I surprised to see ball lightning on that list? I wasn't. I really, really wasn't. But at the same time, what surprised me was the fact that they didn't hit. They're doing the errata on one element of the card, but not on the second element, which limits their own design space. So that's really what surprised me. That was my biggest surprise of the list, is the fact that they didn't just create a better environment for their own designing of the game. Because it's like, that's going to be a hassle. Every time you go to create any card, is this too broken for Briar? Like all the time. That's your design space, and that feels bad. But that's just me from a design element standpoint. I've worked for professional game design companies, and I just don't want to be limited. I want to be able to create whatever I want and do whatever I want, and then just future-proof. Future-proofing is so good. I know people don't like it, and I know that you've had some reservations about it in the past where you limit this to only very specific things like a specific type of clan or a specific type of character or whatever the case may be, because then it feels very niche and then, whatever. But when you're doing an eternal format game, that's just how it should go, because, in 10 years when we go back and we make cards for Azalea and she's never, hit the god tier, and she has her moment because some generic card gets created and they're just like, oh, well, we didn't think about Azalea because that character's like 10 years old, then she gets to have her moment for a minute, and that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. That's what banned and restricted lists are. They're there specifically, very, very specifically, I feel, for eternal format games, because there's no rotation. Yep. So how do you get rid of problems? You have to ban or restrict, or errata. And erratas I don't really like so much because it's like you got to remember a lot of text. But you saw what LSS is doing, right?
They're making new tokens.
Exactly. And that's what you can do. Tokens are nothing. They're cheat cards. Boom, boom, boom. We got tokens. We're good. You 50 to each store. Here you go. Here you go. Here you go. That's nothing. It literally was nothing. It costs next to nothing. But we could have just done it with the Earth card and the Lightning card instead of the Hero. But it's whatever. It's fine. No big deal. All right. Anyways, there's really not much more to say about this subject. You got anything you want to say?
Good list. I'm happy. I can
All
play
right,
again.
guys. So we're going to be getting to you very soon with the link for our ProQuest, and we're also going to be kind of consolidating to our local community first for our Welcome to Wraith event, just to kind of reward them for being loyal. So don't expect to see that publicly for that. We're probably just going to link that to the people that are local here in the shop. But anyways, long story short, we appreciate you watching, and we look forward to talking to you again soon. Take care. Bye-bye.